Hey guys, it's Carl Brown from GuitarLessons365.com. So I have kind of a unique lesson today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to create some interesting chord forms, probably ones you haven't seen before or heard before, by just using scale forms. Now, all chords, at least in Western harmony, are built from scales. So we know that, and we know that the theory behind them all can get pretty intense too. But what I want to do is really just kind of get some new sounds underneath your fingers without having to think about the theory behind it. And it actually becomes quite fun. So I'm going to show you just kind of how I come up with little stuff like that. And I've done this with a few students, and it really just kind of breaks them out of their mold. And you can create some really cool musical chord sequences by doing it. So let's start first with the scale form. Now, I have a whole thing on my website on GuitarLessons365.com. The link to the lessons will be in the description, which tells you, shows you all the 3 notes per string scale forms. So I'm going to be using a 3 notes per string scale form here. I'm going to use the very first one, so make sure you've looked at that lesson and just at least get the first scale down. Now, before I get into the actual scale forms I'm using, you can use any scale form. If you like the cage scales, those will work great too. So don't worry about really what scale it is. It's really just kind of the process, what I'm kind of showing you here. So let me just show you what it's about. I like to start by finding the root notes first of the chords. So let's just create a basic chord progression. So this is a G major scale that I just played. And if you count the notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is the octave. Well, those would be the root notes. So if you wanted to create a chord progression, like a 1, 4, 5 chord progression, that would be the root of that chord. The 1 chord would be the first note in the scale. The root of the 4 chord would be the 4th note, and then the root of the 5 chord would be the 5th note in the scale. So I'm going to create work around a 1, 6, 2, 5 progression. So that's going to be based off the bottom note, the first note of the scale, the 6th, the 2nd, and the 5th. So you can just kind of get that sound as if it's a chord progression. You probably recognize it. Alright, so now let's get to the actual chords. Those are going to be the root notes of the 4 chords in the progression. Now, what I like to have people do is first, after you know the notes of the scale form, pick just 2 or 3 strings that you're going to use for the notes. So let's look at these top 3 strings here. We have basically 5, 7, and 8 on the B string and the high E, and then 4, 5, 7 on the G. So all those notes work within this key of G major, because it's built out of obviously off of a G major scale. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to experiment. I can use any 3 notes, these 3 notes on the G string, these 3 on the B, these 3 on the high E. Don't worry about what the actual note is. I can play the root note, that's the first chord, root of the first chord, and say I'm going to play the first note on each string. So that's here. Suddenly you have a very unique chord form. Sounds a lot more interesting than we have. And then when I go to the E, let's say I want to grab, alright, now I'm going to grab the last note on the G string. I'll show you what I did in the intro. First note available there on the B, the 5th fret, and then the middle note on the high E. So it sounds a lot better than just a basic minor. So you could do a basic major. This is what this is supposed to sound like. Just major and minor chords. So far, these first 2, we've got this now. Far more interesting, and you don't even know you can analyze this stuff all day, but use your ear, find what you like. All right, and now let's go to the 2nd note there, the 3rd chord, which is basically built off the 2nd on the scale. And once again, I'm going to use the 5th fret there on the G, and the 8th fret here on the B, and then the 5th fret on the high E. So we have. So that you can experiment with that. You're like, I like that one. How about if I just did this? Did the 7th fret there on the G instead, or just kind of moved it around. Something like that. You know, you could just mess with these notes all day. Find chord forms you really like. You'll notice that as you play, you'll kind of create little melodies. And then this last one, I'll take the last note on each string. And maybe here I like this one, like we use this, but I took a note back and took it into scale form before it, so you don't have to be married to just one scale form, because I liked that D in there. Now, a fun way of doing it and just experimenting is force yourself to use specific strings. Like you have the root note, but let's say, all right, I'm just going to use two strings, and the notes are going to be based off of something on the G and something on the A every time. You know, just something like that. Or you can use, say, like the 5th string, 3rd string, and 1st string. So you can use those 3 strings. So you have to come down and have a lower, kind of hybrid picking kind of stuff, you know? So you can experiment all day. Just say I'm going to use only these 2 strings or these 3 strings, and just whatever strings they are, it's just arbitrary. It's just all about experimentation. You're going to find some chords that you really like, and when you find these chord forms you like, memorize them. Remember the sound of them. Is it a minor type sound, or a major happy sound, or is it kind of a dominant sound? And that's what you do, and you create your own unique chord voicings that way. It's a really fun way of doing it without having to know a bunch of theory. You just need to know a simple scale form, and that's it. This is a method, like Alan Holdsworth has very unique chords, and I've seen a video where he talks about doing it kind of like this. He'll just take a scale form, he'll pick arbitrary strings that he's going to build this chord form off of, and then he knows his note choices on each one of those strings, and he just experiments combining them in different ways and creates some very unique chord sounds. But it's not out of left field. It's an actual scale and a key that he's using, and you can use your modes, you can use whatever to create these to build your chord forms out of. All right, hope this will inspire you to come up with some cool stuff. I'll see you again soon for guitarlessons365.com.